seen her do that in my life. She went to dinner with him the first date, and they went to the opera, or the symphony, and after that, she was pretty much at Fred's for the evening for dinner, because he cooked, and company and whatever. And as I was here without a car, I was blessed to get leftovers from Fred, and I teased her all the time about tossing me a frozen pizza as she drove by. I was grateful that Perkins was within walking distance. On the first visit down here, I met Miss Lillian, and I was super apprehensive about spending time with her in Mona's house because, you know, old people tell all these boring stories of, I remember when. That woman surprised me to no end. She told me stories of being a Democrat, devout, all the celebrities that she met, great sense of humor, fascinating lady. I heard about her being a bar owner in Montana. I heard about her post office mistress days. She and I were very much alike, and she lived an amazing and very interesting life, and I was blessed to be a part of it. After Mona moved to Fred's, Miss Lillian invited me to come and stay with her every year, and we grew to be very close. She was the mother I wished I'd had, and I think she looked on me as a daughter. They will be with me always. Every time I swore, I got the face, "We are ladies." Properly scolded. Mona loved the pink afterglow of the sunset. Mona loved a perfectly plated meal, and she was incredible at making beautiful quilts, and included my 3 grandchildren along with her own. Miss Lillian. Every time I find the perfect parking place, I hear her. "Good, clean living, honey." And every time I came down to visit, when you have a short span of a couple of weeks, you never get in all the things you want to do. And when I would say to her, "Lillian, I didn't get to go to Sharky's," or "I didn't make it to whatever," she would say, "Well, you have to save something for next time, honey." So I will miss them immensely until the next time.
Good morning. I am Diane Bonney. Unlike Jan, I knew Mona only a short time. I met her the end of October in 2022. I had just completed my training with Tidewell Hospice, and Mona's family had been seeking a social visitor to visit Mona. Tidewell gave me a bio of her, and it indicated she liked music and that she played the flute. And I said, "Oh, here I am. I played the flute in 1965. Well, I visited twice a week, generally for about 2 hours, talked, we got to be friends. As long as I could make her smile, I was happy, or laugh. I always got a smile after about 2 weeks, and shortly after that I'd get air kisses when I left. I would ask her, "How are you today? Are you peachy keen?" She just looked at me like, "Is this lady crazy?" I walked in one day and I said, "Hello, I'm peachy keen," she says. So that was our joke between us. Then I'd take her out to the garden, fresh air, a change of scenery. Well, she told me I was a crazy lady that didn't know how to drive a wheelchair. And she was right. But we'd go out, and there might be 5 or 6 people out there, conversation, laughter, and Bob, who was the infamous flirt who kept asking Mona to marry him. And she said no, and he said, "Well, could you at least give me your money?" I don't know who he's flirting with now. I got my smiles, but I was way down the line from Laura. Somehow it worked out. We met up in the garden one day on Facebook from the staff, and Laura asked, could she FaceTime me when I was there, and so she could talk to her mom. I gotta tell you, I was no better at FaceTiming than I was at driving a wheelchair. So Laura got me a stand for my phone, and I still couldn't do it. As time went on, I could see Mona weakening. Days when she was tired, I let her sleep. I just sat next to her and talked about nothing or whatever. And once in a while she'd wake up and smile, and that made my day. We enjoyed each other's company. I became friends with members of the family. They included me in the circle, for which I was thankful. So, goodbye, my friend.
Hi everybody, I'm Vicki. Mona was my dad's wife, as they said, Fred. And I just have a couple things, and then I want to read something my daughter wrote. Mona was a great friend. You know, she never tried to be my mom. She wasn't. She was a great friend, but she was a great mentor. We had quite a special relationship too. She was a nurse, I'm a nurse, so that gave us a bond right from the beginning. She was a little crazy though at times, and she would look at me and say, "And bless your heart." And I'd think, I don't know if that's good or bad, because I've heard both. She gave me my bonus family, right here. The whole crew. They've taken us in, we've taken them in, we've all become family. We don't think of each other as anything more, less than family. And she really gave me my dad back. After my mom passed away, my dad was not himself, and that will be in what I'm going to read. But as soon, and the story that was told, that Jan told about going to dinner and the symphony, yes, that's exactly what happened. They were never apart after that. People said to me after my mom passed away and he hooked up with Mona, "It's too soon." I said, "Is there a date?" is there amount of days? I said, they need each other. They're together. They were wonderful for each other. And a little funny story. She called me one day. She says, I'm sitting on the floor. I said, yeah. Well, I can't get up. I said, well, you don't have one of those I fallen and can't get up things, do you? She says, no, that's you. So she says, can you come over and can John break into my house? I said, I don't know. I don't know what to do. John tried, we called 911. And here's Mona sitting on the floor. She hadn't fallen. She was trying to get up off her couch, thought she could climb over to the chair and get herself up. Couldn't do it. She's sitting on the floor, and I took a picture and showed her later. There was probably 15 to 20 young firefighters out there, who one of them they sent through her kitchen window. And I said, Mona, you know that thing on Facebook where they say why little old ladies call 911? It's not because they need something, it's to see all the hot firefighters. Oh, she laughed. We had a lot of fun with that. So after Mona passed away, my daughter Melissa, who's my middle daughter, wrote something on Facebook, and I got my tissues, don't worry. This says it all. It says, when my grandfather first started his relationship with Mona, he sent an email to my mom to let her know. He described her in detail, explaining she was from another country, significantly younger, and was blessed with 5 children. He talked about how he was going to marry her to help her get her green card. Some in the family had a good laugh, knowing his sense of humor, and some freaked out. If sarcasm is genetic, I know that I got it from my mom. Oh, I know where I got it from, excuse me. Hang on, I've screenshotted this so I can read it. If you're able to find someone to spend your life with once, you're lucky. But to find that twice, beyond words. We wouldn't have been able to enjoy the 4 years we had with my grandfather after my grandmother died if it hadn't been for Mona. He was a shell that after my grandmother died, having spent so many years taking care of her, and damn did that leave the biggest shoes to fill to any man having taken care of his children and grandchildren. Mona came in and changed all that and treated the rest of us as her own with no question, and without trying to replace the one who he had lost. I can picture her now, this is the really funny part, staring me in the face with gentle but firm expression, telling me, yes, Melissa, I died on your birthday, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can sit there and be miserable, or you can enjoy the day. But quit whining, because it won't change anything. So even though today what wasn't what I expected, and secretly hoped would go the way it did, I'm content with the way it was. Enjoy eternity until we meet again. That to me, when she wrote that, that's Mona. I can just hear her telling Melissa to stop whining. But Mona was great. Like I said, she was a great friend. She gave me my dad back. She gave me my extra family. I just don't know what else to say. We always used to send her home with food because leftovers at that point in her life was her favorite meal. So we made sure we always had extra. She had plenty of leftovers. So anyways, like Melissa says, until we meet again.
Good morning. I thought I had a lot to say, but it's too much to say. But here's the thing I learned over the last couple, you're going to have to bear with me. I learned that grief is paired with gratitude. I wanted so badly to spend time with my mom over while she was in Florida in what was first known as Orchid Cove. And I had to do a lot of things that were impossible for me to do by myself. And all of a sudden, in every single circumstance, somehow help came to me to support me in being able to do what I wanted to do, which was to spend time with my mom. And so first of all, the first thing that happened when our worst fears came true and she had the stroke and went to Orchid Cove was that she ended up with the best roommate in the whole world. Betty and Mona were like pals, and and my mom was unable to speak much at that time, but Betty was like the walk-in comedian who kept Mom just vibrant and smiling. And I thought, oh my God, how could we get so lucky, Betty was the biggest gift, and such a consolation to me. It allowed me to go home and feel like she's okay. She's gonna be okay. And that was just the first example. I found staff that worked with my mom who had the hearts of angels and were paid nothing. And they, too, were incredible gifts that made me feel more gratitude than I ever knew I could feel. I had people who picked me up from the airport and housed me and fed me. People who gave me so much comfort and love. Friends who gave me money for flights. My husband who kept me afloat for 2 very long years. The best hospice visitor I could possibly have dreamed of. Came and made my mom laugh, and me too. And I felt like my mom was in such good hands, and even though we couldn't all be there, there were people who had hearts that were much bigger than ours and were able to make her smile in ways I never could. So I learned this amazing thing, this gratitude that comes totally entwined in grief. And the world became beautiful in a way I could not have imagined through this darkness. That is good news for me. How we become so connected in times when we feel most I just have to let it rip, At the times we feel the most lost and the most alone, those are the times when life comes in and brings you people that you could not have created so beautifully. And my mom was one of those, actually. The things my mom taught me are the things that connect me to all of life. At a very early age, she taught all of us to value people no matter who they are. And maybe especially because they're different from you. You can learn something. She taught us justice and fairness from the get-go by doing silly things like if she made brownies, and there were only enough for 5 of us, which is what we had, 5 of us. She'd say, okay, well, then will you divide the brownies, and you choose last. Brilliant. And she did that repeatedly to set us up for minds that kept justice in mind all the time. And I have been privileged to have an open mind toward people who are different from me because of my mother. And I'm most grateful for that. So gratitude, I feel like, is the world I am swimming in. I am grateful for those of you who came today. It means a terrific, more than I have words for it. Back to that. My mother and my aunt Lil were women with such courage and willingness and need to do good that I thought that was how everybody was. I didn't have a chance to get to know Annie Lil's grandkids much, but we do have 2 of them with us today, which I'm grateful for. And I would like to read you a letter from Rachel, who is the daughter of David Lil's son. They're out in Portland area. She says, "This is my little tribute to Grandma Lily." Hope I can get through it, Rachel. Grandma Lily will always hold a special place in my heart. As a young child, she would send me the newest toy on the front page of Toys R Us magazine with the sweetest card. When I got older, she invited me to spend weeks with her at the lake house in Michigan. She taught me how to water ski and the best way to eat fried pickles. I don't know what that is. When I visited her in Florida, we would spend hours playing Scrabble, of course, Scrabble, in her sunroom, and she made me fall in love with fresh grapefruit. All throughout high school and college, Grandma Lily and I were pen pals, and I would look forward to her handwritten letter that always ended with, "I love you, honey," spelled Hunny. Grandma Lily was one of my biggest fans and always encouraged me to chase my dreams, no matter how big they were. I always felt her love, even though we lived far apart. I will cherish all the memories I have of Grandma, and every time I wear fancy high heels or buy a fancy purse, I know Grandma Lily is smiling down on me. She will be forever missed and loved. Thank you.
You're just right size.
There, perfect.
I wrote mine down because I'm not a good contemporary, or that's not the word, contemporaneous speaker. This was seen on a Mother's Day card. Good moms let their kids lick the beaters. Great moms turn the mixer off first. We had a great mom. Our mom was a treasure, and the gifts she gave us were many and varied. She gave us life, love, security, and a beautiful home. Much of it created by her own sense of style, color, design, and creativity. And she did it all truly on a shoestring. As a teen, she planned to go to design school in Chicago. Life had other plans for her, and marriage and 5 kids in 8 years kept her plenty busy. But her sense of discovery, experimentation, and a love for junking, as she and her best friend Alice Dominy called it, made for a warm and welcoming home. She gave us the gift of learning to get on with it, as Melissa suggested. Life happens, challenges happen. Wipe your tears, make a plan, move on. And she gave us all a lifelong gift of reading. The weekly walk to the bookmobile in Grand Rapids opened our worlds to Dr. Seuss, dinosaurs, particularly for Will, mysteries, and my favorite at 6, the Little Bear books. When we moved to Niles, Mom and Dad got us a set of encyclopedias. We didn't live right in town, we lived on the outskirts. And for those of you under 40, encyclopedias, before Google and the internet, held the information of all the world. Mom gave us the gift of time to discover our interests, to daydream, or as she liked to call it, wool gathering. We weren't overprogrammed, so we had the luxury to explore. She shared with each of us 5 unique souls, 5 little kids, the time and the patience we required to flourish and grow. These past 2 years since her stroke have been tough on us all. To not have her as a sounding board, to miss out on the casual conversation. We missed her before she was even gone. Shortly after she moved into skilled care, I asked if she was content there, or perhaps we could move her closer to one of us. She replied, and it was a struggle for her to get words out, but eventually, if you had patience, it would come. She'd say, "I like it here." And then I then asked her, "Do you mean here in Venice or here at Orchid Cove?" And in using a typical phrase of hers, which I know most of you will recognize, she struggled again and came out clear as day with, "As I've made abundantly clear, I like it here. I like the staff." Message received. To know and to be really known by Mom has been the greatest gift of my life. And to feel that I knew her well is something I treasured. But to see her through other eyes was a stunner. When I was in college, at the beginning of a course, I met a young woman who had recently moved with her husband to the area, and we began to chat. Me, "Where have you moved from?" She said, "Fort Wayne." I said, "Oh, my folks live in Fort Wayne." And I asked, "So you worked as a nurse?" I said, "My mom is a nurse at Parkview Hospital." She said, "I worked at Parkview." And then she asked, "What department did your mom work in?" And I said, "Acute coronary care." She said, "I worked in that department. What's your mom's name?" I said, "Mona Price." And then this woman's eyes got big. And she took a small step toward me, and she touched me on the sleeve like she was meeting Elvis or something. She said, "Your mom is Mona Price? She's legendary." And I kind of stammered and said, "Well, she's always been a great mom, but why legendary?" And she proceeded to tell me that when she started on the unit, she had 1,000,001 questions as a new nurse. And she said whenever she asked the hows or whys or how to do anything, the doctors and her fellow nurses said, "Ask Mona. She knows everything there is to know." And then she said to me, and she did, "She's legendary." Mona Price, our mom. Weren't we the luckiest kids ever? I'm going to segue into Annie Lill. And this is appropriate for both of them. C.S. Lewis, who was an author and a theologian, in speaking about his wife, Joy, upon her death, said, The grief now is part of the happiness then. That's the deal. And we had it in abundance with the two of them. There were 10 years between Annie Lil and my mom used to joke that something happened to the gene pool because my mom was 11 inches shorter than Annie Lil. So Lillian Elizabeth Luckett, Farron, Kiel, Williams, Kiel, was the second, Uncle Paul twice, my favorite uncle, was the second child of Paul and Mary Luckett, older brother Morris, younger sister Mona. She could read before she started school. She was moved ahead 3 times, graduated at 15, and married the next day. Her wedding bouquet was pink peonies from the neighbor's yard. Mother to David and Joan stood, as she said, 5 feet 12, plus 3-inch heels, plus hair usually on top of her head. Was always a working woman. Worked for an engineering and blueprint company called Rapid Design in Grand Rapids. Worked in real estate in Michigan and Montana. Was an active member of the Democratic Party. Named as a delegate to the Democratic National Conventions in 60, 64, and 68. In 1964, when Democrats were trying to fulfill John Kennedy's wish for the Voting Rights Act, there was a contingent from Mississippi that was trying to get time on the floor of the convention. And for political reasons, Blue Dog Democrats were not inclined to let that happen. And so there were a group of them that decided, this is before special little electronic name tags, they had their thing on a lanyard with their name on it. There was a group that would leave their name tags on the table out front so that the delegates from Mississippi could borrow them for the afternoon, be admitted into the convention, and be able to picket around the floor in support of the Voting Rights Act. And so that's what she did, and she got it later on. She met myriad celebrities and politicians there. Her daughter Joni was one of the Kennedy girls, which was teenage girls who, were there, build them up from young, keep them going. In a receiving line in the 64 convention, she met Frank Sinatra, who was getting ready to introduce her. Have you met the vice president? She said, yes, I know Mr. Humphrey well. And then lingered just a little longer with the handshake with Frank. Later on, met Trini Lopez in the elevator and ate out on that for a while. She was appointed by Lyndon Johnson as the first female postmistress for Grand Rapids. She couldn't live without MSNBC, and she was kind of the Forrest Gump in our family history for all of her brushes with celebrity and famous people, including on her first honeymoon with Uncle Paul when they were in the South visiting his sister in Memphis. They went to the grocery store, and there was this singer standing on the back of a flatbed pickup truck, which she later learned was Elvis Presley. So, it's safe to say she was the pixie dust over my life. She just had a way of looking at you and making you feel like you were the center of her world for that moment. And when she shone her light on you, there was nothing you couldn't have done. Magic. Magic. And she was also the Scrabble queen of our family, although many of us tried to take the mantle from her. And eventually did, and even talked about having t-shirts made up that said, I beat Annie Lil at Scrabble. That never happened. But most of us, when we play Scrabble, we look at the tiles in our tray and make up the best word we possibly can. That was not her way. Because you could sit for a while with those 7 tiles and not not have a good spot open up for most of the game. She would take a look at her tiles, study the board, pick up usually the highest scoring tile in the tray, plop it down on the highest scoring thing she could find, and then make the word. And she had a vocabulary that was not a problem for her. But she'd pick up the tile, wait long enough to get your attention, and then with a twinkle in her eye, she'd play the word. But before counting up her points, she'd give you a look that said, "Watch and learn, child. Watch and learn." So that's Annie Lil. And I thank you, and particularly you, Betty, too, for being here to share with us. It's been a gift.
Thank you all so much for helping those of us who didn't get to spend a lot of time with these two. No more of legendary Mona Price and force of life, Lillian Kiel. I tell you, what wonderful stories. I had a chance to talk a little bit with Lil's grandsons and to hear from them just their perspective on her love of life, her love of the water, and loved it here in Florida. As you heard, she met many, many impressive people and had such an impressive life. Both of these ladies did. And I was glad to hear from Tim that her great-grandchildren got to enjoy some of those stories, and I always loved hearing about those days. Wow. Thank you all. And Laura, you're right. You could never say enough words, but we're thankful for the words we've heard. Keep telling the stories. I want to briefly read 2 passages of Scripture and just have a comment. I was talking with Barb about the service, and I said, well, I would not want to face Mona someday when perhaps I go to my great reward and have her say, now, why didn't you read the Bible and preach a little bit? I'm not going to preach very much at all, but I would invite you to listen to an intriguing story about 2 sisters from the Bible, found in 2 different places. The Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, says this: Now, as Jesus and his disciples, as they went on their way, Jesus entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks. So she came to him and asked, Lord, do you not care that I am doing all of this work and my sister has left me to do it all by myself? Tell her to help me. But the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you're worried and you're distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing, and Mary has chosen the better part. That will never be taken away from her. Now, there is a second episode with these 2 sisters, and it happens on the day that their brother has died. And Jesus, being a good friend of the household, comes to mourn with them. A certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary, and her sister Martha. When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been buried for 4 days. Bethany was near Jerusalem, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them about their brother. And when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, while Mary stayed at home. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask him. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. And Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again at the last day in the resurrection. And Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, they will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never truly die. Do you believe this? And she said to him, Yes, Lord, I believe you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who has come into the world. I'm fairly certain that today's the first time I've ever had an opportunity to celebrate the lives of two members of a congregation in a memorial service at the same time. And I'm very certain that I've never remembered the lives of two sisters at the same time. And so, of course, I was reminded of this famous story of these famous sisters, Mary and Martha. I really did not have a chance to get to know Lillian during my first tour of duty here as an interim pastor. And she had passed by the time I came back for my second time. I did get the opportunity to interact a good bit with Mona, and I know what a delight she was. I can only imagine, especially now hearing some of these stories, I can only imagine what they were like when the two of them were together. Sisters are undoubtedly alike in many ways, sharing common parents, genetic traits, some parts of their home life, perhaps, some similar interests. That these two sisters decided to spend their final years together here in Venice says a lot about their love for each other. But sisters are also, without a doubt, different in their own ways. I know that Lillian was the older sister and had some very different life experiences from those of Mona. It's been beautiful to hear your reflections today and know more about their lives. We give thanks for the uniqueness of each of these sisters and for the time that you've had them. I heard just one line of a great story about the occasion when Mona turned 80 and Lillian was 90, and they decided they would have a 170th birthday party. That in itself says a lot. What a joy that must have been. These sisters, Mary and Martha, were similarly both alike and different. And the text tells us that. They shared a home, many of the day-to-day tasks of living. You get the idea that one of them was maybe a little bit more of a sit down and talk to you kind of person. And the other one was more of let's get this place ready for company kind of woman. Each person and each personality is valuable. And the differences we have are welcomed and used by God in our lives. Sometimes when we read the story of Mary sitting at the feet of Jesus, taking in what he had to say, we feel that Martha, who was more worried at the moment about the kitchen and all the details that needed to be taken care of, Martha kind of gets a rap as the bad sister. But after all, somebody needed to worry about the food, or everybody would have starved. Now, I don't know that you could characterize either one of these two as more attentive to details or more attentive to people, but both of these lives were needed in this story. Both of these women were great benefit to Jesus himself, not to mention to those who were gathered around. In the second story, it is Martha who gets to understand first just how important faith in God is in a time of trouble. She's heartbroken over the loss of her brother, Lazarus, and she wishes there was something more that she could have done, if they could have just had some more time with him. But Jesus speaks to her of a deeper life beyond this life, and he asks if she believes. And, of course, she does. But Martha slows down long enough to realize that there is more to this life than what we see and know and experience. and she's comforted by that. All I can really say about these two beautiful sisters, Lillian and Mona, is that I know they were women of faith. I know that they were loved by their families and that they were loved by this congregation. And like Mary and Martha of the Bible, I know that they were both alike and different, and that their differences were a valuable and beautiful part of who they were. So on this day, with faith in the Christ who said, I am the resurrection and the life, we remember them, we celebrate them, and we commit them to the great care and to the care of the great God who gives us life and life forever. Amen.
And now please join me once again as we sing our second hymn found once again in the bulletin, Be Now My Vision, verses 1 and 4, standing if you are able.
Again, a reading by David White from Consolations. This is solace. Solace is found in allowing the body's innate foundational wisdom to come to the fore. The part of us that already knows it is mortal and must take its leave like everything else, and leading us when the mind cannot bear what it is seeing or hearing, to the birdsong in the tree above our heads. Even as we are being told of a death, each note an essence of mourning and of mourning, of the current of a life moving on, but somehow also, and most beautifully, carrying, bearing, and even celebrating the life we have just lost. A life we could not see or appreciate until it was taken from us. Listen to the words of the Deer's Cry, also known as the Lorica, the breastplate of St. Patrick.
God's eye to look before me, God's wisdom
to guide me, God's way to lie before me, God's shield to protect me from all who shall wish me ill, afar and near, alone and in a multitude, against every cruel, merciless power that may oppose my body and my soul. Christ with me, Christ before me, Christ behind me, Christ in me, Christ beneath me, Christ above me, Christ on my right, Christ on my left, Christ when I lie down, Christ when I sit down, Christ when I arise, Christ to shield me, Christ in the heart of everyone who thinks of me, Christ in the mouth of everyone who speaks of me. I arise today.
You will all be invited in a moment as soon as we finish our service here with this responsive benediction to come to our hall, our fellowship hall. The family and the wonderful members of the Esther Circle are setting and providing time for a reception. I will come and lead the family out first. In a moment, we'll all be standing, and if you'd let them get out, we'll come over, and then you're invited to come to the fellowship hall. Spend some time there, speaking with members of the family and one another, celebrating these lives and this love that we have remembered here today. After a time, when everyone's had time, the family will come, and they'll need to be excused, where we'll come for a private interment here in our memorial garden with Lillian and Mona, and we also have other members of the family today. Those that have passed, we will be interring some of the ashes of Joan with Lillian, and also with Dylan, who will be interred with Mona. What a sacred moment to have family together at this time. And so let me invite you, if you will, again to stand as you're able. We will read together our closing benediction. It is a prayer from the Jewish tradition, a prayer of remembrance. And if you'll be prepared to read the responses in the bold type, let us stand. It's entitled, We Remember Them. I'm sorry? Here we go. In the rising of the sun and its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of the winter,
We remember them.
in the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring,
We remember them.
in the blueness of the skies and in the warmth of summer,
We remember them.
in the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of the fall,
We remember them.
in the beginning of the year and when it ends,
We remember them.
when we are weary and in need of strength,
We remember them.
When we are lost and sick at heart,
We
we
remember
them.
them.
When we have achievements that are based on theirs, we remember them. When we have joys we yearn to share,
We remember them.
as long as we live, they too shall live. For they are a part of us as we remember them.